Hi, I'm Deborah Morris, author of the Real Kids, Real Adventures book series and creator of the TV series. My job is to track down all the stories we use and go interview the real kids. Sometimes that turns into a real adventure of its own. The stories are all true, so I have to get every detail right. That can be a lot harder than it sounds. Working on this series is always an adventure.
After that, I wrote for magazines, and it just kind of naturally spun into eventually wanting to write juvenile real-life dramas. Things like Rescue 911, Unsolved Mysteries. Kids are really into those shows, but there's nothing else out there in print for them.
Right.
And the whole point you made about positive things for kids, headlines, you read the newspapers every day, you see, you know, kid criminals, you see everything bad.
Gangs.
These are all very positive stories about kids who have oftentimes risked their own lives to save someone else, like these guys did. They were very modest, but what they did was absolutely putting their own lives on the line.
Did you ever think you'd be a role model before you were 19 years old, 20 years old?
Their parents were shocked.
Real Kids, Real Adventures. Thank you all very much.
What first gave you the idea to do that?
Well, actually, writing for Reader's Digest and some of the other magazines, I kept running into kids in these stories, and the kids were so much more fun to interview, and they said so much more interesting things than the adults
Well, they're more
did.
open, aren't they?
Well, yeah, and their point of view is a lot less boring. Excuse me, adults. But it was just more fun.
No, it's the kiddiness that makes it interesting, you know.
I think
now,
so.
John, in your case, if you don't mind telling me, you saved your father's life. Y'all were out at, was it the Blanco River right here in Texas? You live in what, San Antonio?
San Antonio, Texas.
San Antonio. And y'all were out fishing, is that correct?
Yeah, with my uncle.
Yeah, and your boat capsized, you were in some sort of a whirlpool, and your father was tangled up and being pulled under, and you saved his life. Now, do you mind if I just ask you, of course, it's in the stories, and all you have to do is pick up the books and find these things out. What ran through your mind? Isn't the first thing to escape, to save your own life?
Well, it seems like I was already in safety.
Yeah.
So the first thing that passed through my mind was to help my father.
Yes.
And he had a heart condition.
Oh my.
He had surgery on his heart, 2 years before that?
Yes.
And the first thing was that I was hoping he wouldn't give up because he was in so much pain from being sucked under that, you know, that he wouldn't give up.
And how long
on
did you
me.
have to hold him there before you got additional help?
Oh, it seemed about, I think, 20, 25 minutes.
Oh my goodness, and you must have been exhausted.
Yeah.
Did you at any time during all this ordeal feel like that you might lose him?
When he wanted to give up.
He wanted to give up and you kept him going.
Yes,
How did you do that?
Just by talking to him and holding on to him and making sure he wouldn't give up.
You see, I just think that's marvelous
He's a
to be able to
great psychologist.
And you find a lot of these, do you?
Oh, yeah. There are more kid heroes around this country. In fact, I have made a discovery after doing so many of these stories that if I'm ever in a life-threatening situation,
you hope it's a kid
I hope kids are around, because adults will stand there and watch you die, and kids will just jump in and help you.
Without even thinking about it.
You're right, they do get the press, they get the headlines, and then we have a tendency to write off the whole barrel when we see one kid doing this and another kid doing that, and that really isn't fair. And I would assume that that's probably very depressing for the average teen today.
I think it is. I think a lot of times kids, they view themselves, it's always been true, kids see themselves in the mirror of their parents' eyes. And they see themselves more and more in the mirror of the media's eyes and television and headlines and whatever else. And if all we do is tell them that the kids are in trouble, that they're all doing violent things, that they need to be afraid, very afraid every time they go to school, that's what they're going to come to feel about themselves. And it's just not the case. They are the vast minority. The kids who are causing trouble are a tiny minority.
Well, you fill both the television screen and the pages with great stories and very encouraging stories, but your own writing was birthed out of your own brush with death.
Yeah, I had just started writing, dabbling with selling a few articles here and there, and my family was actually going to a reunion in Florida, a high school reunion, when a tractor trailer ran our minivan right off the top of an overpass. And it was one of those off of a cliff things, slow motion, the whole thing. We hit and rolled end over end down into a deep ravine among trees. And all 6 of us, my husband and I and our 4 kids, walked away from it with nothing more than glass splinters. God was there. I mean, without a doubt, God was there. And I wrote about that for Guidepost magazine and just discovered that true life storytelling was my thing. I loved writing it. I liked the feel of it, and that's what I've done ever since.
Isn't that
Wow.
neat? In addition to that, maybe our viewers don't know, she rides a motorcycle.
Yeah.
She's a motorcycle mama. She's got her own little Harley, don't you?
I do. I have a 98 Sportster Hugger, which is kind of like the smallest Harley that's made. It's a piglet instead of a hog.
Oh.
But it's very scary because it's sinister blue, which is the scariest blue you can imagine. It's kind of like your shirts, only it's a better color than, no.
Wait a minute here.
Only it's blue.
Wait just a second here. If you had a yellow motorcycle, then you're really traveling upscale.
Oh, but this is sinister blue, so it's much scarier than yellow.
Isn't that neat? And your point is well taken that we as adults oftentimes would think, well, the police are coming, the fire department is coming, and kids have that impulsivity to just jump in and say, I think I can do something, and maybe we need to learn something from them.
It's one of their greatest strengths and also one of their greatest weaknesses. Acting on impulse, it makes them terrific heroes. And if they don't have training, it makes them very vulnerable, which is why one of the things that I advise is kids, take the Red Cross courses, take the babysitting courses, get into Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. If they know how to handle emergencies, they are some of the best rescuers you will ever find.
Deborah, the series Real Kids, Real Adventures, you can see it on global television in Canada and on the Discovery Channel here in the States. What's been the response to the program?
It's been tremendous. We're going into our 4th season now, and I get emails actually from all over the world in every language. I have to have a whole fleet of translators. But kids everywhere are very encouraged by it. I get letters from parents, and I also get letters and emails from both kids and parents who are telling me stories about someone they know or someone in their family who has done something similar to what they've seen on TV. There are lots and lots of great kids out there.
Tell us a little about your life.
My life, oh boy. The things that led up to me being interested in writing, primarily when I was young, I wanted to be a writer. And I grew up thinking, well, you can't make a living like that. You can't make a living being a ballerina, a concert pianist, a writer, or an artist, right?
Any of the things you really wanted to do.
Yeah, you can't make a living at that. So I didn't even attempt it. But I did attempt a lot of other things. When I was a teenager, when I was 15, I started working when I was 14, saved up money. I asked my dad if I saved up enough money to go to Europe if he'd let me. And he stupidly said yes, thinking I would never do it. And so I did. I saved up my money for a year and said, okay, I have enough for my plane ticket now, bye.
I'm leaving.
So I went over and kicked around Europe one summer.
How many children were in your home?
I was the youngest.
The youngest.
And the only girl. And this was a trauma for my parents. But I was a very good girl. I was a Girl Scout, straight-laced, choir girl. They had no problems with worrying about what I was going to be doing. It was just the fact of me going across the world.
1,500 miles from them.
Yeah. So I did that. I got married at 17 with my parents' blessing to a wonderful Christian boy turned man who had just turned 21. And
been married over 20 years now.
Yeah, we passed our 20th anniversary early this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And the two of you have had a rather interesting life, too.
Yes. It started the year we got married. My husband was kind of an entrepreneur type, so we lived right on the river in Florida, Central Florida, and so he decided that maybe we should try a commercial fishing venture. So we bought a fishing boat, and we decided to be fishermen. So we were fishermen for about 6 months until we lost all of our money instead of just part of our money. And I learned to despise fish. I don't like fish. I don't like things.
To this day.
I don't eat fish. Things that crawl through the sea don't come close to me. Yeah. And so we sold our boat and worked real jobs for a while until we had a little bit of money again. And then we decided, okay, it was 1980. And the price of gold went up to over $800 an ounce. And it so happened that in my family, my dad owned a gold mine in Arizona. And it was a gold mine called the 1896 that had been closed down in the 20s because gold had dropped down to less than $30 an ounce and it wasn't profitable. But we did some quick calculations and said, you know, a mine that wasn't profitable at $30 an ounce could very easily be profitable at $800 an ounce.
Sure.
And my dad said, well, if you want to work it, you know, here's the keys to the mine, or go do it. So we said, all right. So we headed west. At that time, we already had 2 kids. My youngest daughter was 10 months old. And so we got 2 partners and went west. And
to work a gold mine.
To work a hard rock gold mine that required dynamite. One of my primary jobs in the business was going and fetching dynamite from Phoenix, which meant that myself and my 2 little girls had to drive the whole trip from the mountains down to Phoenix with these exploding bomb signs. It says dynamite, and it has like 2 parts of a bomb going boom, and pasted on every front, back, and sides of my car, which I found a real advantage because people just scatter.
Just stay away from this woman.
Nobody bugs me. I could drive anywhere I wanted, and the street clear.
Nobody cut in front of you.
Never.
Nothing.
Never. I wished I had kept some of those signs for later.